Hi, Jay, back again. Non-Kyrgyzstan, not in Russia, nor in Brazil. I'm now in my fourth country in 4 months, and you'll probably have no idea what this country is, so let me explain. You can tell I'm in a mountain, on a mountain. I'm quite a ways up. I'm about 6,500 feet up in the Himalaya Mountains, the first range of the Himalaya Mountains, in a place called Mussoorie. You can hear some cars honking. There's a large road below me here. It's a very steep mountain. You can see the mist behind me. This is the monsoon time, and this is the monsoon mist coming up. And it's beautiful what they do. They bring us these flowers. You can see vegetation all around me. It's a gorgeous time of year. This is where I was born. This is where I grew up. This is where I spent the first 12 years of my life, on this mountain. I went to school here, and this is where I graduated from. So I'm come back, you might say, just to visit my roots, to come back, to visit friends, to visit family as well. And I'm looking at the west that way, as you can see panning around over there, the beautiful oak trees. Fog coming up, we're in the clouds. You can see one of the deodar long needle pines right next to us here. I don't know if you can see further on back that way, you can see some dahlias up along the banks. But we do have a lot of dahlias here, and it's this beautiful flora that we have up in the Himalayas that I love so much. Now, as I do in these videos, I don't just talk about the landscape, and I don't just talk about the environment, I also talk about Islam, and that's one reason why we're doing these videos for Fander Films. And so I want to zero in on Islam here in India, and I'll probably do a series of videos on Islam in India, starting here with the Himalayas. Because if I were to look that direction, don't look right now, but that is the south. North would be this way. On the other side here, if we were to go up to 7,000 feet, this mountain would go down to 2,000 feet, jump back up to 10,000, go back down to 2,000, and then shoot up to 22,000 feet, 22,000 feet, on the other side of which is Tibet. We're right at the northern fringe, right at the border of India. Below us, all India spreads. Huge country. We're in the northern part. In Uttaranchal, which used to be Uttar Pradesh when I was born and when I grew up here. Mussoorie is a hill station, and going east, all these trucks that you hear going below me and all these horns you hear are going to Tirhi Garhwal and other Uttarkashi and Kedarnath. These are very famous Hindu mountainous sources, you might say. They are places of pilgrimage for the Hindus because they come up here and taste the water, because this is the source of not only the Jamna River, but the Ganges River, the two great rivers of northern India. But what about Islam? What are we going to say about Islam in India? Islam is very important to India. In fact, according to the latest statistics, this country has the second largest Muslim population in the world. Now, that has been debated. Indonesia, I don't think anybody disagrees, is the largest. 160 to 170 million Muslims in Indonesia alone. India has anywhere from 138 million up to 176 million. Now, that's an awful large population. Of course, there are those that say that Pakistan would be about equal. And that's debatable as to which is larger, Pakistan or India. What we do know is that it came to this country, Islam came to this country in the 7th century, very early on. In fact, it was one of the earliest Muslim countries. There were certainly Arabs who traded with India on the western coast, that direction, in the western coast of India. There were Arabs who used to come across even before Islam came here. They were Arab traders. And so there was a lot of contact with the Arab world in the 6th century, up until the 7th century. What we do know also is that the earliest mosque that was built here in India was on the western coast, in the Malabar area, and it was the Mappila people who were the first to convert to Islam. And they were converted primarily by these traders, these Muslim traders during the Umayyad period, or even predating to Umayyad period, because the earliest mosque that has been suggested, now nobody can really substantiate this claim, but the earliest mosque that has been suggested was built on the west coast of India in 629, which means it was built even before the Prophet died. I don't know if I believe that or not. It doesn't matter what I believe at this point concerning that mosque. What we do know is that certainly by the end of the 7th century, Islam was well ensconced in India. Many people say that it was ensconced, it came here through raids. I probably disagree with that. Most of the initial, certainly the initial impact of Islam on India was through traders, these Arab traders. Then in the 8th century, the Umayyads did send people under the auspices of Muhammad bin Qasim. Muhammad bin Qasim then raided and took over the Sindh, which is now today Pakistan. Later on in the 10th century, Mahmud of Ghazni, from the Ghaznavids, came and took over the Punjab, which is where the Sikhs live now, the western part of what is today Western India, right next to Pakistan. And it was in the 12th century that finally the Delhi Sultanate was finally established. And then Delhi Sultanate was then the headquarters of Islam in India, which later in the 1500s up until the 1700s became the Mughal dynasty. 1500s up until the 1700s, when then finally the British came and took over all of India and united it as one country, including what is today Bangladesh and Pakistan. But it was that Mughal period that was the flowering of India. That was the most important part of Islam in India. And of course, as we're going to see later in other videos, it is when the greatest architecture took place. So 8th century was when the first real raids, the first real conquest of India took place. Initially, Islam came as traders, then it came as raiders. And it was the raids, the conquests, that brought in the Umayyads, followed by the Ghaznavids, then followed by the Delhi Sultanate, followed then by the Mughal dynasty, which was primarily came out of Persia. And of course, the great flowering of architecture at that time. Interesting, we're going to see that later on. Now, why do I say all that? Because India, therefore, has had a great tradition of Islam. Islam has had a huge impact on this country. Anybody would agree with that. But it's also brought troubles with it. We're going to talk about that later. This is just basically an initial introduction to India, an initial introduction into Islam coming to India, and also to introduce you to my mountains, the mountains I love, where I was born, the Himalayas. This is Jay then, up in the Himalayas, about 6,500 feet up, right here amongst the beautiful clouds, during the monsoons. Over and out.